We'll start just by introducing ourselves. I'm going to put my watch up here so I can keep track of time. And I'll let Lisa go first.
Does that get too dark up here? Does that help? Can you guys see the screen in the back? Can you hear me if I don't use a mic? Yeah? Yep, okay, good. All right, I'm Lisa Shepard. I'm a partner with Ernst & Young out of our Houston office, and I am primarily involved in both the traditional energy practice as well as I am our area leader of our Cleantech practice as well, which is what brought me here to Denver to talk with you guys here today.
And I'm Milan. I'm a senior manager at Ernst & Young. I've been in public accounting for 13 full years, going on my 14th year now, working primarily in energy and clean technology also. I love the fact of Denver is it's a great place for the new energy, and I do love that. I love being involved with the entrepreneurial companies. It's just a lot of fun. As we go through our slides today, I want to take a look at the table of contents. Our topic, of course, is how corporate investment is accelerating. You'll see that's the last item on the list. Before we get there, what we want to do is get a lay of the landscape. We have a lot of information that lays out, I kind of think of it as a topographical map. You know, we can get the lay of the landscape, see how things look, and then when we know how things look, we know we can plan our approach to navigating. And so that's kind of what we're going to do, and we're going to get to the corporate involvement at the end. That'll be our biggest section on it. As Chris mentioned, this is based on, and I'm going to walk away from the microphone here, and Alessandra's going to let me. We've got this out front, and this is what is driving this publication, is what drove the CCIA to ask us to get involved today. So if you haven't picked that up, feel free to pick it up on the way out. But the information comes from a lot of sources, not just that publication. And so you'll see a lot of information, but when we get down to that last section, it's primarily coming out of that publication.
And we also left out front two other publications. I see a couple people have picked those up. One is called The Future of Energy, and excuse me, it's based on what we call an ignition session that we sponsored as part of our Strategic Growth Forum, and it brought together industry, actually primarily traditional energy-based executives, as well as clean tech energy executives, got them all into one room and essentially talked about what are the challenges that energy is facing and what are the challenges that clean tech is facing to get to commercialization, and how does that interact and play in with the traditional energy. So you may find that as an interesting report, especially being here in Denver where you've got both on the ground as well. And another one was called Action Amid Uncertainty, and this was recently issued. It's another survey-based publication, and it looks at from the inside out of corporations and everything about climate change. So it's talking about the governance that companies are putting into place, the sustainability officers and their roles, and then also the clean tech side, both from revenue and cost savings. So you may find that interesting. If there aren't enough of the reports out there, just let one of us know. I've got a sign-up sheet, and we can get them to you electronically or by mail or both. So take a look at those.
All right, and then lastly, before we kick off, I think from our perspective, instead of holding questions till the end or comments, I think as we go along, if you have questions or comments, feel free to bring them up then. I think that's, that way we don't have to leave the idea that you had as we were on that topic. And when I looked at the RSVP list and who we have here today, I think to get the perspective from so many different people is important and will be helpful. I think it will be helpful to the group. All right, let's start with, this is a busy slide. but I want to point out a few things here. Now, if we look over on the left side, there's some environmental and cultural drivers that drive clean technology. There is a growing world population, and there are scarce resources, and that is just the fact of it. And as a global community, we're waking up to that. We look at commodity prices, particularly when we're talking about fuel, and we see commodity prices rising, and if those continue to rise, as we saw in 2008, people shift their behavior when that happens. And so if we've really reached this thing called peak oil, then we do have a scarce resource when it comes to that. And so that's a driver. There's also popular culture, regardless of your point of view on it. There is this growing popular culture that says, we really haven't done all we can to take care of our environment. And people have that, we should do more. And so you have that also driving it. And clearly there's a governmental component that's really driving it. And so what's happened as these things have converged is that the clean energy industry has, and of course it's been around for a while. I mean, we go back a long way for solar, right? But it's really starting to pick up. And have we reached that critical mass yet? That's really what we're aiming for. So what we see is a maturing industry. We see an ecosystem almost of clean technology companies. Lisa, did you add anything on that? Okay. A few things that I want to point out here is there are some challenges, trends, and drivers. Some key challenges, and this is certainly not intended to be all-inclusive, but the capital-intensive nature of a lot of the clean technology is really creating a challenge. Trying to move something from the idea to commercialization is very different than it was with the software boom in the 90s. It's very different. And so this capital-intensive nature is a real challenge for these, for clean technology. The other challenge that's related to that is we're seeing very few, or relatively few, venture-backed companies having an exit. And so that's putting a strain on the venture capital side of it. These are really longer-term investments than what the venture companies had back in the 90s with software. It was a quick in and out. It's not the case here. So that's another reason why we see companies being challenged, the clean technology companies. Another trend that's happening that is driving some of the clean technology growth is the concept of pricing carbon. People have a lot of different opinions on that, but this is a worldwide trend, and in fact the U.S. is, you could say, amongst the developing countries, the U.S. is lagging. But within the U.S. we do have cap and trade type programs. There's a regional one in the Northeast, and there's also an exchange traded one. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And then, of course, government regulation, which we'll talk about a little bit.
I guess to expand on the challenges, I'm sure many of you have heard the term the Valley of Death. It's bridging this gap between the initial investment in an idea, a clean tech idea, and bringing it to commercialization. And the challenges that Milan's talking about in that Valley of Death in the middle is where companies are finding a lot of challenge. They can get some money for the idea up front, for the R&D side of it, and maybe they can even get it to the lab, but they're having a real challenge going out to the next step and getting that big chunk of money for the plant or the prototype or the next stage to bring it to commercialization. This orange book that we've got, the Cleantech Matters Going Big book, has a section in there that goes into that in a little bit more detail and has a few charts and graphs if you're interested in reading more about that.
Does anyone have any other insights or ideas, just as we look at this initial component, what's driving the clean energy? Does anyone have any other thoughts? Yeah.
Well, I think that while the carbon